Welcome to the On Stage podcast, where we interview musicians and members of the entertainment community. Glenn, pleased to meet you. You and I have a mutual friend, Wayne Anderson from Element 117, and I feel very honored that he asked you to be one of our guests. And I looked you up and I'm like, wow, how come I never heard of this guy? Because you're fantastic. So, to let you know, I'm going to play Life Loves a Tragedy at the end of the final podcast. But after listening to Shangri-La, I have to include that one too. That was a great song. His name's Glenn Kidd, and he's a rock and roll artist, and he's from New York City, and he's been recording and performing since the mid 80s. And as a toddler, his love of music began by playing drums on tables. We've all been there. Before becoming a professional air guitarist, to songs he heard on the radio and turntable while dabbing with the xylophone, piano, flute, harmonica, maracas. I played maracas, and tambourine in between. Do you actually know how to play the xylophone and the maracas professionally?
Well, when I was a kid, thank you, first of all, Chris, for having me on your show. And thank you to Wayne from Element 117 for telling me about you and having me reach out to you. So thank you. It's been a wonderful compliment also about the songs you had mentioned of mine. So when I was a little kid, I had a pair of maracas that my uncle had given to my brother. And so they were in our house that we had in Brooklyn, New York. And just I don't have them anymore. I kind of wish I had those pair of maracas because they came from my uncle. And as far as the xylophone, I wouldn't say as a professional xylophonist, but actually on my song "You're in Love with Me," which there's only three musicians. There's myself, my brother Phil Feit, who plays bass on that, and a drummer named Steve Holley, who played drums on it. And so I played percussive instruments on that song, and xylophone is one of the instruments I played in one little quick section of that song.
Yeah, that's. But what about the tambourine? You still play the tambourine professionally?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm not at gigs, but because when I'm playing gigs, it's just me singing, playing guitar. But I do play tambourine on some of the songs of mine.
Yeah. Oh.
Such as that song I just mentioned, "You're in Love with Me." I played tambourine on that.
What do you think is the best way to keep on the path of musicianship? Like when you were growing up and you were playing the maracas, the tambourine, everything. I don't know if you played the cymbals or anything, but what made you want to go and choose music and come up with all these fantastic songs?
Thanks. It's a great question. I mean, my first love of music, because my older brother is a musician as well. So I got turned on from him, from all the records that he had that went from the 1960s, and I was a child of the 1970s. So growing up and listening to Kiss and T-Rex and all these
Wow.
kind of bands at that period. And then my parents had all the great records of people like Frank Sinatra and Elvis and a lot of the crooner type of singers. So music was constantly in my house. Besides listening to the local radio here in New York, and you would hear doo-wop and Motown and all that stuff that I love. So it was just something in me. And to answer, like you asked the part about about the musicianship for people.
Yep. How did you keep on the path of musicianship and not give up and do something else?
Well, I do have another career besides doing music. So my other career is pretty much what I've been doing for nearly 30 years. But music is always still part of me and something I still love doing. And when I get the opportunity to make songs and put them out, I do. And anytime I get the opportunity to play shows, I still do too.
So you consider yourself a rock and roll artist, or do you consider yourself what kind of musician would you? What genres do you specifically like? I've heard all different types of genres from you here. What do you consider
Yeah.
yourself, a rock and roll artist?
Yeah, the rock and roll artists, because all the like songs like Shangri-La, for instance, which is really influenced from 1950s rock and roll and doo-wop. That song is that kind of an example of it. So and I love Motown and all the British invasion music, and of course the early '70s glam rock and bands like the Raspberries and Cheap Trick and all that kind of stuff. So they were all very. And then you go into the early '80s of acts like Billy Idol as an example, which is a big part of all that's real integral to my music. Even the band The Pretenders, the original lineup of The
I
Pretenders
love
is
the
really tremendous.
Pretenders.
Yeah, me too. So I love that, and I love all the stuff like Laurel Canyon Sound, the Beach Boys. All these things are so part of my DNA. So sometimes they come out obviously in these kinds of songs where you hear like when you complimented about on my video for Life Was a Tragedy and saying that it reminded me of Crowd House and a Squeeze. I took that as a real big compliment. Or you said You said Crowd House. I think you said Squeeze was the other band, and I love both those bands. They're great.
So I take it that when you were younger and you were playing the drums on the table and professional air guitar and everything, your parents went, you know what? I think Glenn's going to be a musician.
Well, it was already there because my brother's a bass player, and he actually started out originally as a drummer, and then by the time I was born, he became a bass player. So it was already, there. So around my house, my dad liked to croon and sing,
Oh, wow.
and so when I was in, my dad bought me my first acoustic guitar, and it was just there, the love of it, and I'm glad, and I'm very grateful that I had parents who encouraged that, and I also have a brother who was a big inspiration to me musically.
Wow, that's great. I mean, my own brother is a veterinarian, but his wanting and the desire to be a vet didn't inspire me to be a doctor or vet or anything.
Right.
But that's interesting. So your brother is a musician and your father was a crooner. So do you mind me asking what band does your brother play in?
So, well, my dad wasn't a professional crooner. He just liked to sing, and
Okay.
he had that voice. My brother was an original founding member of a band called Riot, not to be confused with Quiet Riot. He was the original bassist of that band. And then he's also the original bassist of Billy Idol, and most people know my brother's bass work on the album with White Wedding.
Yeah, yeah, that I was a fan of Billy Idol growing up. Yeah, so your influences are doo-wop, Motown, the British Invasion. I guess that would be Beatles.
Yeah.
Adult contemporary bubblegum pop. I was looking at that thinking bubblegum pop. What
Well, like
exactly what exactly does that mean to you?
when I think of bands like the Partridge Family, right? Because I remember as a kid, a little kid in Partridge Family was on TV, and I was watching that and thought David Cassidy was
Yeah.
not only cool to look at, and I say this as a straight guy, but that doesn't matter. But I was looking and thinking, this guy looks cool. He had that look, but he was a great singer. And to me, there's a little bubblegum, but I kind of go back to maybe bands like, I guess I'm thinking like the Raspberries, and with songs like Go All the Way, uh, the band called Big Star, which had that also. There's a lot of that late 1960s. If you go into that period of the late 1960s, like bands like the Cowsills. Well, I wouldn't really consider them bubblegum pop, but there's a lot of these bands that are in the late 1960s that had that kind of certain sound of flair. There's a great song actually that I love. It's called Brotherhood of Man, and it's by oh no, it's actually the band's called Brotherhood of Man. The song's called United We Stand. And you probably have heard it, but the two female singers on that song, their names are Sunny and Sue, and they sang a lot of background vocals on songs like by T Rex and Mott the Hoople. Actually,
Mhm.
not T Rex, Mott the Hoople. So it's just a unique. It's that glittery kind of glammy sound, I guess. I don't know how to describe bubblegum rock. I should really know that, but I got caught off guard on it.
When you start singing your song like "Life Is a Tragedy" or "Shangri-La" or any of those, does it go through your mind, my brother's a musician, I got to make sure that he's proud of me, I want to emulate him? Or do you just say, you know what? My brother does his own thing, I do my thing?
Right? No, I don't think that at all. I do my own thing, and the influences, a lot of my musical influences, got inherited from him because he turned me on to so much great music. But I'm just doing what I do. And actually mentioning him, one of the greatest compliments is that he played bass on my song "Give Up the Ghost" as well, and I have him in the video. And when I had him to come play his part on that song, and his friend Tommy Price, who was the drummer also in Billy Idol, and my brother also played with Joan Jett with
Mhm.
Tommy, that my brother, when we finished that session for Phil's part of the bass, he said to me, Glenn, you're like the Lawrence Welk of composing and directing and orchestrating the whole thing. And I took that as a real compliment coming from him. He wasn't insulting me, and I didn't take it as an insult. And I wasn't a fan of Lawrence Welk particularly, but I thought it was a great quirky compliment.
Yeah, I would think so. So, what is glam rock? Like Rolling Stones, maybe, or Thomas Dolby,
No,
or
no. Thomas Dolby was in the '80s, and that was more like synth rock or synth pop. Glam rock is bands like Mark Ball and T Rex, the early David Bowie, Ziggy
oh, David
Stardust.
Bowie? Yeah.
Yeah, some people would consider the New York Dolls glam, but I don't. They look glam because of the way that they had dressed and everything, but they wouldn't consider themselves glam rock. I think they would just consider themselves a straight out rock and roll band.
Wow, you're so
So glam rock got this title because of guys like Mark Bolan and David Bowie.
Yeah, you're so passionate about music. How do you keep up with your mental health? Because you have all these things that you're doing, writing music, working, living your life. How do you manage your mental health?
Music. Music, and well, the most important thing is love, right? Self love, that you love yourself, and that you're able to just love life and love people who are in your life, and that helps tremendously. And love what you love, whether it's a movie or anything that you love that brings you that feeling of joy is a great way for anybody that has mental health stuff that goes on in our world. And that's what a lot of my songs kind of, they don't cater to that, but you can kind of see where some things are like in that way. Like a song like "Give Up the Ghost" is a song that has the about like the thought of committing suicide, and or those feelings of it, or knowing somebody who has passed from a suicide. And so it's to
Hmm.
help let go of that stuff and really go back to self-love.
Yeah, I noticed that. What's your songwriting process? I understand what you're saying there. Dealing with your mental health is music. When it comes to your songwriting process, let's say, okay, the song Give Up the Ghost. How did you put that together?
I actually started writing that during the pandemic, and I was writing it on my keyboard on a piano patch.
Don't dry your tears, just let them be wet, soaking wet as you face shadows of despair. Angels are
And those chords that I play on the song, they kept at me. And I had the title already. When I started that song, the piano, the only lyric that I had was the opening lyric that said, "Don't dry your tears, just let them be wet, soaking wet." And I recorded that little idea onto my phone, and I knew that that piece of music wanted to get composed. And finally, 2 years later, my friend had a recording studio at the time, and I went into the studio and I laid the track down. And it was myself, Thommy Price on drums, my brother Phil Feit on bass, Tommy Mandel, who had played with Bryan Adams and John Waite. He played on a lot of my other songs like Shangri-La and Safe to
Hmm.
Smile. And he did the violin and cello part as well as a mellotron and French horn part. And then my friend Jenna Ferrone sings on the song with me, and she had sang on a couple of my other songs as well. So and then the guy who engineered the song, who mixed and mastered, this guy Michael Frondelli, he did Billy Idol's Rebel Yell album, and he also, because you mentioned Crowded House, he actually worked on that song "Don't Dream It's Over." So it was great to have this great team of people on that song of mine. But that's how the song. Once I laid the piano track down with Tommy Price's drums, that's how it started first. Then all the lyrics started to come out of me.
Yeah, I actually love that song. And Stillness Speaks is another song.
Thank you.
And Life Loves a Tragedy. I was watching that so many times and I'm like, wow, this has a meaning to it. What
Mhm.
life experience does Give Up the Ghost and Life Loves a Tragedy? I know that every musician who writes a song, it's some sort of experience in her life. So what experience did you have for Give Up the Ghost?
Probably a lot of the same feelings that people go through when you feel all the different emotions, just to survive, to stay alive, and then knowing people that you love and care about and that have gone through experiences, as I mentioned earlier, like with either suicidal thoughts or have
Hmm.
been part of that or lost somebody through it. So it was kind of a culmination. And a song like Life Loves a Tragedy, ironically, I also wrote that and Stone Speaks also on piano. And with Life Loves a Tragedy, what I'm playing on that song, I'm playing a keyboard, but the patch on the keyboard is what they call a tremolo guitar. So I'm not actually really playing guitar on that. I'm playing a tremolo guitar. And there is another guitar player on that named Betty Landa who plays on the song as well. That song I wrote 20 years ago. And that, funny enough, thank you about the comment about the video. That was a fun video to make. I really liked it. If you kind of watch it carefully, you can see I'm kind of taking the piss out of a lot of things. And when I initially wrote that, I was thinking about all these TV reality shows at the time, and the talk shows where I'm not your father's baby and stuff like that. So, and just how that kind of to me is such a distraction, and that's really what that song's about. And then just when I recorded and filmed at the time when I filmed the video, we were already now dealing with the cell phones that we currently have. So when I
Hmm.
wrote the song initially, it was the flip phone. We didn't have the current like
Yeah.
iPhones, but it's all about that, like just being kind of in that. So I don't really personally think that life loves a tragedy, but sometimes, as you know, Chris, events happen in the world that seems to bring people closer together, whether it was unfortunately like a 9/11 or something. And it seems like sometimes it takes tragedy to bring people together. But my meaning for that song was a little bit more sarcastic, where it was saying like, we're kind of catapulted into the lives of, if you listen to the lyric, we vicariously escape the reality of our lives. So it's clear what I'm saying is kind of like, let me not deal with my life, and I'm going to go see what everybody else is doing, or kind of get a buzz off of people throwing chairs on a stage, over who's the father's baby or something. So that's what that song's really about.
Yeah, that does. It just gets me right here and I listen to it. Everyone will play life loves a tragedy at the end of this. Did I just go like this? Must be this way.
It doesn't matter.
So we will play Life Loves a Tragedy at the end of this interview with Glenn Kidd. It's a really great song. It's actually very danceable. Now, I
Thank
was
you.
discussing with you Shangri-La, and I really liked that song. I was like, wow, why? Great song, Glenn. Great song.
Thank you.
Who helped you write that song? And what is it about?
Nobody. I wrote that all by myself. I was living in Florida at the time when I wrote Shangri-La, Stillness Speaks and Life Loves a Tragedy. And Shangri-La, I wrote on an acoustic guitar, and I also wrote the bass lines, the walking bass lines that are on it. I don't play bass on that song. It's Larry Russell who produced my record.
Hmm.
But might as well play bass on it because I wrote the bass lines. But I did the guitars on there. And, when it came to me, I remember it was in my dining room at the end of it was actually in early 2005 when I wrote that song. Still in Speaks I wrote at the end of 2004. I don't really know what the inspiration was. I remember I had that opening lyric that goes, "It's fear of the unknown that will
Yeah.
get you every time." And then I just built the song around that lyric. And those chords I wrote that song in less than an hour.
An hour. That
Yeah.
is that the quickest you ever written a song?
No, the only other song I wrote that quick was "Safe to Smile." I wrote that song in Shangri-La. I remember I had a little bit of some different lyrics. I had to write the same music, but originally with the demo that I have, it has a little bit different lyrics, and it was a little slower actually musically until I did one version of it which was slower, and then the one you hear is the faster one. Uh, but "Safe to Smile," I wrote that song in like about 30 to 40 minutes, and I never edited one lyric. Everything you hear is as is. Matter of fact, that song was done 2 days after I wrote it, and the vocal take the guitar take is one take, and the vocal take you hear by either is the first or second vocal take that I did for "Safe to Small." But Shangri-La, with this version that you hear, the video, I'm really proud of that because the guy, the saxophonist, for instance, that played on this guy named Arno Hecht, he's in a band called the Uptown Horns, and
Hmm.
Arno Hecht has played on songs like Love Shack by the B-52s, Hot 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 by Buster Poindexter. He's played
Wow.
on so many songs. Played with the Rolling Stones on their Steel Wheels tour. I've known Arno since I'm 18 years old.
Hmm.
And so at the time when he came to track the alto, baritone, and tenor saxophone for that song, he has two daughters, and his eldest daughter had just passed a few weeks prior to him recording the saxophone on my song there. So it was very cathartic for him coming to record because it had been his first recording session since his daughter's passing.
Hmm.
And and the way that that song just came to life between Larry, myself, Arno, Thommy Mandel, who did uh, what they call Rhodes piano and a French horn arrangement on there, and then the three background singers, Cheryl Krebs, George Stass, and Joe Pecorino, who actually played John Lennon in Beatlemania.
Hmm.
They did their background vocals, and the song just came out really. That song came out really, really good. That I'm very proud of even vocally. Sometimes it's really hard about the vocal stuff. And musically, I'm usually okay, but vocals, I'm like, oh, I could have did that better. But Shangri-La, I'm real proud of those vocals, as I am with "Give Up the Ghost."
What's easy for you to do most, the lyrics or the music?
Um, Depends. Usually music. Lyrics. It varies. It really just varies. Where sometimes the songs just flow out, and the lyrics I feel like are solid for that song, and then sometimes I'm like, there's some songs I have that I just have the piece of music, and I can never seem to get the right lyrics to fit into that piece of music.
Well, you got it right for love likes a tragedy, or no, life loves a tragedy. My apology.
Yeah, yeah, that's okay. Yeah, and that whole the funny thing about that song, even the second line, the second verse, where it goes, "I'd rather be talking to the dead than renting precious space inside of my head." I mean, well, that's I really do feel that way actually.
Yeah.
So
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. So, and you've been singing and songwriting and playing music and writing since the 80s. So, what is the one thing you learned from your experience as a musician?
I think well, the first thing is staying humble, staying true to who you are, what your music is. It doesn't mean that you can't experiment and try different sounds. That's what made artists like David Bowie or Prince, any of them that was so diverse in their music, so great because they did that. Where you have bands that a lot of times they're still the same kind of sounding bands that you know. The Beatles were experimental like that. I love stuff like that. But I also love bands that kind of have this formula that works for them and they stay to that because that's how they're identifiable with. And I think for me, it's just really staying humble to what you're doing and just write really from, uh, I guess, from your heart, from your soul. That's how I like to write. From my own personal experiences, more so than me writing about like the way kind of like what I liked about John Lennon's songwriting. He wrote it always from his experiences, and Paul McCartney wrote from his own experiences, but he used a lot of characters in his songs you know, and I tend not to go that route.
Mhm.
Lyrically, I tend to write more from personal experiences.
Well, what do you do when you're stuck at a place in your writing and you can't figure out the last line, the last lyric, and how do you know the song is ended?
Sometimes you do, and sometimes you don't. And sometimes I've had songs like that where "Give Up the Ghost" was like that. When I told you when I wrote on piano, I had that opening lyric, and nothing else was flowing to me until I went 2 years later into the studio and tracked the song, and having Tommy Price's drums actually helped me against the piano line because that's then opened me up lyrically. There's been some other songs sometimes that I might be stuck for a line and then I just go away from it. For like "Still in the Speaks" was one of those songs. I didn't have the title at first. I had the piano piece of music. I had a bulk of those lyrics, except in the chorus where it says "Feel more than think, no more than believe." It's when you find in a piece, and I was stuck there. And I went out in my living room, and at the time I had these different books, and one of the books I had was a book called "Stillness Speaks" by a guy named Eckhart Tolle.
Mm.
And I just happened to glance up, and I went back to the keyboard and put the piano stand on. And I go, "It's when you find in a piece that stillness speaks from the heart. Love is all you need. Stillness speaks from the heart." And so I wasn't deliberately trying to nick the title of Eckhart Tolle's book. It just that was the last part of that song where it came to life.
Is there a song that you had that included an instrument that you said or you mentioned, okay, let's get rid of that instrument and it sounded better without it?
Yeah, "Give Up the Ghost" is a good example of that because I there's no electric guitar in it. I didn't play guitar in that song. I did do an acoustic guitar track, and I did what they call an egg shaker. It's a little percussive thing.
Hmm.
So I put it in the track, and then when Michael Frondelli was mixing the song, when we were talking, communicating over the phone, and I was hearing it through the computers and everything, I said, Michael, can you take out that egg shaker and the acoustic guitar because it's distracting. It's in the way of my piano line, and my piano is the strongest because it's the melody line, and I want that to be more there with Tommy Mandel's orchestral parts and Tommy Price's drums and my brother's bass lines. And do you know that when taking just those two percussive sounds out, the egg shaker and my acoustic guitar track, it actually helped to open the piano up more. If I left it in, I have a version of it just with the vocal and the acoustic guitar and egg shaker, just for my own self. It sounds a little interesting, but it's better without the guitar actually because the song lends itself to just really the instruments that are there. So it's the first song that technically I've released that doesn't have a guitar on it.
Wow, is there a cringeworthy kind of feeling that you get when you listen to your own songs? You're like, oh, did I write that? No.
No,
No.
no, luckily not. I mean, well, actually, not the songs that you hear. Some of my early songs when I was a teenager, I'd be like, "Oh no, no, I wouldn't want to hear that again."
Yeah.
Yeah, crap. But there's only maybe one. there's only one song of mine that's out in the public that I wish I would have that would have been recorded a bit differently. Is my song "You Are Here." I really love the guitar solo I did on that song. I love the song in general. I just do not like the way that the song came out.
Hmm.
So if I had to say one song that maybe makes me cringe a little bit, is that one.
Yeah, I know a lot of musicians. They hear their own songs being played in a restaurant, and they're like, you know,
No, I'm actually happy. That's happened to me a couple of times with some places that have played the song. Like in a one time I walked in a gelato shop and the owner, because he knows me, he was playing it as I walked in there. So it wasn't like he purposely, he just happened to be playing it. And I walked in there and I'm listening to a crowd of people and I go, sounds like me. And I go, oh, it is me.
yeah.
I took it as an honor.
Yeah. You mentioned a lot about Tommy Mandel. He who played with Bryan Adams. Now, did you know? I guess you knew that Tommy Mandel played with Bryan Adams, but were you all over him with Bryan Adams questions and stuff like that? What was he
No.
like? What's he like? No.
No, it's funny. I've been friends with Tommy now since January 2009 when I tracked Shangri-La. It was the first one we tracked for that record, Breathe, Love, Life. And Tommy, I was introduced to him by the producer, Larry Russell, because those guys are friends for like 30 plus years. So when I met Larry to do production of that record, he said, he knew I played piano, but I'm not that fluent of a pianist. And Larry plays piano, but he said, I got a great guy for your album. I go, who's that? He goes, my friend Tommy Mandel. I go, from Bryan Adams' band? He goes, yeah. I go, I thought Tommy lived in Canada. He said, no, he lives right down the street from us. So he came and he tracked and he did this, like I said, he did the Rhodes piano and the French horn arrangement on Shangri-La.
Hmm.
Uh, and he's played on a lot of my other songs too, piano or different string arrangements and stuff. But no, it's funny. Tommy and I will still get together and have coffee. And a few times I asked him, he would tell me these stories about whether it was playing with Bryan Adams or John Wade, or he played with Ian Hunter and
Wow.
David Johansen.
Yeah.
Maybe he played with Dire Straits. But technically, when I hang out with him, I really don't ask him those questions. We're just talking about life and we'll talk about music, but not so much like, that was his gig and he had that. And it's like, if he chooses to say something to me about it, I do, but I'm not going to go, hey, what was it like recording that? There are sometimes, I mean, like even Steve Lukather, who's a very well known guitar player from the band Toto and also plays in Ringo Starr's band. Steve Lukather is a friend of mine, and he played lead guitar on my song "Live, Love, and Laugh," and that to me still makes me in awe that he played on that song. Not to take that away from any other musicians playing, I'm in awe that they all played on my songs. Notable musicians that didn't know what these songs sounded like when they got into the room with me. But when I think about that, like some of these guys that I would watch on MTV, like a Tommy Mandel with Bryan Adams or Tommy Price when I saw him. The first time I knew Tommy Price is when he did the video for Rebel Yell with Billy Idol. My brother had just left the band, so he's not the bass player in that video. But I remember seeing Tommy Price and thinking, man, this guy's a great drummer. You would hear the song The Warrior by Scandal, which Tommy also played drums on, as well as Heaven by Psychedelic Furs. Tommy's the drummer on that too. I just thought, man, this is a great drummer. And I never in my wildest dreams would think that 93, 13, 40, almost 40 years later, a guy like Tommy Price would be playing on one of my songs, but it happened.
Yeah, I was reading
And
somewhere
so,
about. Go ahead.
no, no. So, Tommy Mandel, these guys, one thing I can say about all these musicians that I've worked with, whether they're notable or not notable, I love them all because they're really super nice people, very humble, and just nice people to just talk with outside of music. And besides, of course, being great, talented musicians, and these guys really added a lot of life to my songs. So I give them full credit for that.
Yeah. Were you ever tempted to go? Is there any chance that Bryan and I can like collaborate on the song?
No, no, I've never even met Bryan.
Mm. Yeah. So yeah, you actually recorded with Steve Lukather from Toto, my favorite band. I just interviewed Martin Motnick some weeks ago, and he tried to get Steve Lukather to play with him, and he said, "No, I'm too busy." But my son would be willing
Trevor.
to play, so got together and was playing on one of his songs. You know who Martin Motnick is? He plays for Accept, the band Accept.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, I've heard of him.
so you don't know who like even Wayne Anderson, for instance. I don't know if you know about his Kiss experience, but
I heard of it when I saw the interview. And
yeah,
Steve Lukather's son's name is Trevor, but they call him Trev,
yeah,
Trev. I don't know Trevor personally. I mean, I'm sure he knows of me, but he's a great guitar player himself, like his father. And Wayne, I don't know how Wayne and I connected on Facebook. It was through maybe one of these other radio show things or something like that. But I thought it was great that when he reached out to me about your podcast, I was really honored that he did that
Hmm.
and grateful, of
I'm
course.
honored
So
too.
thank you, Wayne. Yeah, and when I watched the podcast you did with him and his bandmate, and he was talking about Kiss and that whole thing. Oh yeah, well I've got quite a Kiss background myself that goes back to 1975. But it was cool hearing his stories.
Yeah, I like Wayne. Become good friends, and also Mike Green as well.
Hmm.
It's interesting how we're all connected in some way. But so yeah, and with Steve Lukather and John McCurry, who played with Julian Lennon, and Kenny Aaronson, who was with the Yardbirds, especially with the Yardbirds guy, Kenny Aaronson. We know that Eric Clapton played with them, so they know each other. Um,
I don't know if Kenny personally knows Eric Clapton. I'd have to ask him.
because Eric Clapton played with the Yardbirds, right?
Right, but you see, Kenny's a very well known bassist. He's had a long career. Started out. He
Okay.
actually also played bass. He also played bass in Billy Idol. He's in the live video for
Okay.
Moni Moni. I met Kenny the first time, and my brother. It's really funny that my brother is a big fan of Kenny's bass playing, and Kenny's replaced. It wasn't the first bass player to replace my brother in Billy Idol. It was the second one, Kenny also replaced my brother in Joan Jett's band, and they both also play with an artist named Adam Baum. But what's funny with Kenny, who's so great, he's played with so many acts, so many. His resume is like yay long. But I'd have to ask him if he played with Eric. But you know what? One great. I've known Kenny since first time I met Kenny was probably 1991. He came to a show that my brother was doing at this place called the Limelight, and just a great bass player. He played on my song. He played on a couple of my songs. One of them being "Beloved and Beloved," which is very Motown. And when I had him play bass on that, I said, "Think James Jamerson." He knew
Mm,
exactly where to go.
wow.
But I could ask him about the Eric Clapton thing. And then John McCurry, who's a great guitar player, also a friend of mine, that played with Julian Lennon and Cyndi Lauper.
Hmm.
Played with Cyndi first, and then Julian. John plays lead guitar on my song "God and Drag." That's the only song of mine that he plays on.
I I assumed that because the Yardbirds broke up like years ago and Eric Clapton was a member, I thought maybe Kenny Aaronson was one of those members as well.
No, no. The only original member in the Yardbirds is the drummer. Everybody else has been like all the original guys are long gone. And Eric, wait a minute. So there was in the Yardbirds, there was Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, yeah, Eric Clapton.
Hmm.
But then Eric, went on to play with the Cream and Derek and the Dominoes and stuff. But I don't. Like I said, I'd have to ask Kenny if he actually ever met Eric Clapton, which he may have.
Yeah, and we lost Jeff Beck some time ago too, which was sad news. But it's amazing who you like Larry Russell, Billy Joel, Alan
Yeah.
St. John, Billy Squier. These are really high accolades that you have, my friend. Working with these musicians, I'm so happy that we were able to have you on the podcast because your songs, like when I listened to them, I'm like, wait a minute, was this guy working with like even Michael Bolton? I know Michael Bolton. Well, I think he's currently ill right now. I think he had brain tumor. I think
Mm.
discovered he had a brain tumor. Yeah, if yeah, Glenn, if you could do it all over again, like if you could start over, what would you do differently?
Start all over from the beginning of playing music.
If you decided that all the clanging of the cymbals and the maracas and the playing of drums on the table, you said, "No, I don't want to do this." You went a different way.
I don't know. It's a tough question to answer because I'm grateful I have all that in me. Guitar playing. The only thing I probably wish that I was a little bit more of a fluent pianist and guitarist, where I would have learned how to really fluently read music and stuff. But I play mostly by ear, and when I write songs, I'm just playing by feel. So a lot of times, sometimes especially with piano, sometimes I mean I know the root notes that I'm playing, what those chords are, but sometimes even because they're different than in a way than guitar chords. So and the same thing when I write on bass, it's I don't know, I just more feel when I'm writing songs, those songs that have come about, like a song like Life is for the Living, which is a song of mine that I wrote on bass and I play on bass, and the saxophonist on that this guy Jeff Burke who played with Harry Connick Jr. and my friend Steve Holley plays drums on it. My friend Hendrik Helmer did the rockabilly guitar. I play guitar on there too, but he did this very rockabilly guitar in the verses. But it's and I don't know. I wouldn't do anything different. I think even when I think back to the early bands that I play with, whether they were friends of mine from high school, all led to where I am today because those bands that I played, like whether I played guitar in that band or bass in a band or I sang in that band, it helped shape to the songwriter that I became. I would say that probably songwriting is my main thing. Then I am a musician, obviously too, singers, guitarist, but the songwriter is probably the main vibe that I would put myself in. Even though I sing and play guitar, as I said, and play piano and bass, but that I wouldn't change anything, and I'm so grateful. Whether like I said, the earliest friends that I played with in bands, and then I feel very fortunate that all these musicians that we were talking about today that I've gotten to work with have been great, and even the ones that are not notable that have played on my songs, they're great too. They're so talented.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to ask you, who do you think was the best to work with? Larry Russell, Tommy Mandel, Alan St. John, Steve Holley?
Oh, all of them. Larry Russell, he produced all of that stuff in the songs a lot of those songs that we mentioned, except "Give Up the Ghost." I produced that with my friend Hendrik Helmer, and uh, Larry was great to work with because he helped take these songs of mine, and his influence is so similar to mine with Beatles and everything. So yeah, I knew when he would reference something to me or I'd reference something to him, like if it was like I would say maybe like something like Ringo-esque. And Steve Holley played with Paul McCartney in the band Wings, so you know he already knows what to do. And so I didn't actually really give any of these musicians any direction. I just let them do what they do. And sometimes if they ask me, do I like that? Sometimes I say, I don't like that. Can you try something else? And they would, and then it would work. But generalistically, they were all just so pro that it came together so naturally that you don't have to tell them what to do.
Well, it's almost like you didn't know what genre you wanted to do because, for instance, you were working with Hendrik Helmer, who's Carly Simon. Like, she's totally different genre. Ada Dyer, Roberta Flack, totally different genre. Jeff
Mm.
Burke, Harry Connick Jr., totally different genre. So all these, like Roger Daltrey from The Who, exactly, like, you have to, all these are different genres and they play music differently. So how were you?
But they're all pretty like okay. So Jeff Burke's a good example. He's a pretty pro saxophonist, and he played baritone and tenor sax on my song "Life Is for Living."
Mhm.
When he came to the studio, I said to him, "This has nothing to do with him playing with Harry Connick Jr. because he's a pretty versatile saxophonist." I said to him, "Think 1950s, the growl with the horn, like the
No,
early like if you listen to Paul Anka's song Diana, that was a good example I gave to him. I said,
yeah,
think that he knew
love that
exactly what to
song.
do."
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. So, that's the only sometimes direction I give a musician. I say, this is what I'm hearing in my head and see what you can do with it.
Wow.
And
Yeah, amazing. Like,
and Hendrik Helmer, who's a good friend of mine, he's more of a jazz and blues kind of guitar player. He's a big Bryan Adams fan. He's friends also with Tommy Mandel. So, his musical background is a little bit different than mine because, like if I say to Hendrik something, let's say Mark Bolan, T Rex, he does it, it's not his school, so I have to kind of work around that a little bit.
do you know my friend guitarist Ted Perlman? He played with
No,
like Ringo Starr and David Bowie. No, you should check out
no, I never heard of him.
check out my episode with Ted Perlman. Like, this guy's been
Okay,
around. This
well,
is amazing. Yeah. So all these wonderful artists you played with, collaborated with. What do you think are the qualities of a great musician?
great qualities.
What are the okay?
Being able
Let
to
me ask
the
that
great
question again.
qualities of yeah.
What is it like? What are the qualities of a great musician?
Well, the first is if having a nice personality helps. Being able to work easily with other musicians and producers and whatever, and being able to compromise. Like you may think the song should be this way, and you kind of the art, especially if you're working with a solo artist like me. And I'm open to obviously these musicians' ideas because they've worked with some of the best producers and other musicians. So, but also at the same time is when you're working just with musicians, whether it's a full band or soloist, being able to feed off that energy off of each other, and you know instantaneously if something's working or not working. And so being to me, I mean, being clean and sober helps because being under the influence is not a great thing. And so I think to create great music, if you have this pure intent and the music is coming from, you realize that this music is coming from outside of you. In my case, I take sort of very similar theme like Lenny Kravitz does because he knows that that music's coming from God or universe or whatever you want to call it outside, and that his intention is the same as mine to write songs that can uplift and inspire people. I don't need to tell you about getting laid or whatever. It's been done. Kiss is good for doing that. So I rather give something that can make people like a song like "Give Up the Ghost" or "Shangri-La" to make people feel like, hey, I can relate to this. Not that you can't relate to the other songs out there, but I like a song like "Safe to Smile" to me is a song that makes people feel up and happy, and that's what I want to give to people and leave that impression with for them. The songs that are real, but that make them feel good or can help them out of a funk.
Yeah, I'm thinking how okay, so you're very passionate as a musician. So how do you deal with pressures of, like, for instance, you were filming a video, right? So let's say you're filming the video for "Give Up the Ghost" or "Life Loves a Tragedy," and you're doing your thing to create this beautiful piece of music video, and the camera's facing you. How do you feel knowing that this is going to go out in the world and you may have thousands of people watching you singing in front of
Yeah.
the camera? How does it make you feel?
It depends. In the case, well, Give Up the Ghost was pieced together. I took all these pieces of people and put them in the video. I used a royalty-free website that was amazingly all the scenes fit there. The only live shots are the musicians in that one scene where you see, and there's one of me that I did with a selfie, by with the camera of myself of filming me, and my friend Hendrik filmed me with playing the piano part. But Life Was a Tragedy. Larry Russell, who produced that song and plays bass and did the drums for that song, he filmed that video. He filmed a lot of those early videos of mine, like "Safe to Smile" and "Shangri-La" and "Go Love Yourself" and "Life Was a Tragedy." And I remember when we were filming that video, when we went to different locations. Yeah, you kind of, especially when you're on the street and there's all these people walking by, and you kind of like want to stay in your zone to do that. And sometimes it can be very distracting
Hmm.
because people are watching you. Um, so I remember we did the video for "Safe to Smile," which was the first video we did. We did that in Central Park here in New York City. And at the end of the video, you see I take out this Cookie Monster puppet that I still have, and I bring it out. And it was kind of cool because people, you can't see them because they weren't on the camera, but they were staying in front of me like here, and they were actually watching when I was doing the puppet. But that was a fun moment. It's things like that. Yeah, I wasn't conscientious of, but a video like "Life Was a Tragedy," the scenes in the street, some of them where there were people around, I was a little bit more kind of very focused, and I just wanted to not be distracted, or you don't want people to get into the scene when you're trying to film that.
Wow. How do you think the rise of social media changed the landscape in musicians and their careers? Like, for instance, um, so AI, for instance, artificial intelligence, they could literally take your voice and have you singing like Barbie Girl or something.
Yeah, I don't like that at all. I actually just talked about that on my Facebook page, that I don't like the fact about AI writing songs, because to me it takes away that talent you have within you to create something. I think, can AI be helpful for certain things? Like when they did that Beatles Get Back documentary and they put that together, that's great. But to take like let's say your vocal and put it into whatever, let's say a Donna Summer song or whatever, I don't know. It may sound cool just for the goof of it, but when it's really overused, and that's what kind of a little scary about to me about AI in terms of music. But that technology has been used obviously in films, as you know, and in music, and the technology in music, even with like things like auto tune, is there to help somebody's vocal pitch in a way. But the AI, I've seen on YouTube where there's like, let's say Paul McCartney singing a John Lennon song.
Hmm.
Now, if he really was singing John Lennon song, I totally get that. But when you have an AI voice of him singing John Lennon songs or the other way around, that just kind of like, I don't think that's a good idea.
But that documentary for that last Beatles song is, as Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr said, the Now and Then song. They had removed John Lennon's vocals, and they used AI to create this beautiful song called Now and Then, which is the last Beatles song. It can be
Right.
used for good, but what about when the AI gets so good that now that AI can be used to create films, you can have a musician say, you know what? I'm not going to spend the money to do a music video. I'm going to use AI. I'm going to put myself in a music video doing whatever I want it to do and not spend a cent. And then you see this music video out there. Hey, it's Glenn Kidd. Wow, what a great song, music video. And you're like, that's not me. I was eating potato chips on my recliner. All that, you know? So,
Right, and just a record, all those music videos of me, I'm really in there. But well, it's the same thing with that Chat GPT. You know, these things are not going to go anywhere. We're in this sort of astrological period, from what I understand, and the way the technology is going in the next 20 years. So, like, it's there, and I think we can embrace technology, just like we have this thing with the computer and StreamYard and get on YouTube
yeah.
and all that and get out, and that's great. We could have done that like so many years ago. So this is a great thing, the technology. But to answer that question about AI, yeah, I personally don't really like it.
Yeah, it's not
I
good because
accept that it's there.
like
I
in
accept
the
that it's there, but
like in the
that's
80s you
it.
had like split ends. Sorry for interrupting you. Just never know when
No, no, and
you're
that was
finished.
oh,
You
that was the
thought.
band. That was the band. That was the band. The other band you referenced in the video for Life Wasn't Tragedy was Crowd House and Split Ends, not Squeeze. Split Ends had that great song called oh oh God, it was the video on MTV. If you told me the name of the song, I would remember the Split Ends song. It was popular of theirs.
So let's say you're playing one of your songs like Breathe Love Life or Go Love Yourself or Clouds Disappear, and somebody comes up to you and says, Mr. Kidd or Glenn, I love that music. I want to do what you do. What is your advice you'd give to that newbie musician?
I say just be start off, play from your heart, play what's true. You know, look, even if your inspiration is someone like, let's use Jimi Hendrix as an example, as a guitar player, or Jeff Beck, you may learn how to play note for note like them, but you'll never really be them. You're your own individual. So what they had in their body, what, you know, their fingers is what makes them the player, whether it's drums, bass, guitar, whatever, piano. And you can be inspired by that, just like I'm inspired by these kind of guys, but realizing that, you know, you're you. And I think if you allow who you are to come through you and to be that, then that's a great way of making music. You know, there's so many talented young kids that you see even reels of on Instagram, and you just think these kids are great, you know. But I think that's being true to yourself. That's why I'll give you an example of something talking about Billy Idol. Most people know Billy for that image with the spiked hair, right? And that's how I first met him, was with that look in when I met him in the early '80s. And when in the early '90s, he put out a record called Cyberpunk, and he was one of the first musicians to do it on a computer. And I give Billy a lot of credit for doing that. But what he did was he changed his look drastically. He changed the physical look of him. He made his hair dreadlocks. There's video of him uh, on YouTube of that, and he looked completely different. He made himself look very like, you know, cyberpunk. This whole thing, and I get what he was doing. He wanted to try something different, but it didn't work because he is known to look the way he does. That's his image, right? So his music, thanks to his guitar player Steve Stevens, who I know also is a brilliant guitar player, has helped Billy's music, you know, really be as broad as it is. No pun intended on Billy's real last name, Broad, but it's broad. And but when I look at guys like Billy and Steve actually, even with his big black long hair, that's his image. That's his look. Like if he had a totally different haircut, made his hair blonde, it wouldn't. He's better. Those guys sometimes when you have a formula that works or an image, a brand, you're better off sticking to it. When you start going all over the place haphazardly, it's not like what it used to be. When guys like to say this, when guys like David Bowie experimented with the different looks, or the Beatles, starting with the Beatles experimented with the different looks. Then guys like Bowie and Prince and all that, it's okay. People moved along with that. Now, I think if you're a brand, you have a certain way. I'm not saying you should never change your hairstyle or hair color or something, but you're known a certain brand. Your best bet is to stick with it because, like in anything, if you're a real estate agent, you're not going to be selling Little Debbie's Hostess cakes. You might, But if you like, which are you? Are you the real estate guy or you're that guy?
Hmm.
So I think if you stick to what you're, that doesn't mean you can't do other things, but I think if you stick to what you have in music and you can experiment, experimenting's great. Listen to different music. This is what I would say to kids who are becoming musicians. Listen to everything. Listen to the jazz guys like Miles Davis. Listen to flamenco. Listen to different music that's outside of pop music or rock or anything. Listen to disco, listen to hip hop, listen to whatever moves you, get a feel of it, and then you might be able to kind of use that, like kind of like what I do with a song, like sort of like with Shangri-La, where it has a little bit that doo-wop vibe to it,
Hmm.
and but I couldn't say I was a doo-wop artist, far from it.
When I was
Right.
listening to that song Shangri-La and I saw you with your sunglasses, not only did I think of Roy Orbison, but I thought of Clem Burke, Blondie. I'm
Yeah,
thinking,
let me tell you something. Let me tell you something about Clem Burke. Hold on a second. First of all, and my hair is even a little bit more shady. Do you know how many people often think I'm him? The best one that whoever thought that I was Clem Burke or Blondie is actually Ace Frehley of Kiss. He once thought I was Clem, and I've met Clem once. Really nice guy, but he's tall, a little taller than me, a little bit bigger, and he's older than me. But great drummer, one of my favorite drummers, one of the best drummers in the
mhm,
world. Listen to that drum intro he does on "Dreaming" by Blondie.
mhm.
That thing is a masterpiece.
He's an amazing drummer.
Amazing.
And Chris Stein is good as well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that's what when I watched that Shangri-La, that had quite a vibe. And hey, Clem Burke's rocking out.
Yeah, but my hair was back in that video. See, like
Yeah,
more like this, I could see you
yeah.
going about Clem Burke. But I take it as a compliment. Matter of fact, the funny story I want to tell you about Clem. When I met him a couple of years ago before the pandemic, my brother and I went to a benefit concert at a place called the Bowery Electric, which is owned by the singer Jesse Malin.
Wow.
And so we went to this club, and he was the house drummer, me and Clem Burke. And one person was near me, and they came over to me because I was wearing my leather motorcycle jacket, and they said, "Oh my God, I'm a big fan of yours." And they had the stack. They had a couple Blondie albums. They go, "Would you sign my Blondie albums?" I go, "Clem Burke's right there," you know. And I later told him that. I said, "Yeah, somebody wanted me to sign your Blondie records." He thought it was funny, but you know, I take that as a compliment because again, he's a great drummer. I don't intentionally look like him. I used to get Paul. People used to say I look like Paul McCartney. I've heard some funny ones. Actually, it's funny you mentioned Roy Orbison because that happened to me a couple weeks ago too. I was looked like this. I had sunglasses on. I was walking down my street, and somebody said, "Hey man, you look like Roy Orbison." I go, "I never heard that one, but now I've heard it twice. Once from you."
Actually, Roy Orbison Jr. is also a musician. His son, he looks nothing like his father. Looks nothing like his
No,
father. No.
no.
So
And
it's amazing.
and Roy was one of the greats. I mean, listen to the
Yeah.
vocals of him. One of my favorite songs of his is the song "Crying," which, if you listen to that song really carefully, it's very inspirational to John Lennon's song "Just Like Starting Over."
Yeah, my favorite song is In My Dreams. That's my favorite Orbison song. He's got some really good classics, even tearjerkers. What about your music? What do you want your fans or the people listening to your songs, what do you want them to take away from it?
Whatever makes people feel good, whatever they took away from it, if it made them feel happy and lifted their spirit up, then that's great. My intention is not to make music that makes people feel depressed. Even if a song like "Give Up the Ghost," watching that video can be a little depressing because of the scenes that are depicted in there. But if you listen to the lyrics really carefully, you can hear that it's a song to lift you up.
I know I don't want to ask you this, being a Christian, God and drag, like, can you explain that one?
Sure. So no, it's funny. So there's a funny story with that. So I wrote that on piano actually too, and I had the music. So there was a spiritual guy, a teacher named Ram Dass. He was pretty well known, and he had a saying, which was a beautiful, brilliant statement, which goes way back to a guy named Hafiz, who was a poet. But he said, treat everyone you meet as if they are God in drag. So it's almost saying like, I am God, you are God. Kind of like what Jesus was saying. I am you, you are me. Like the Beatles saying, and I am the walrus. I am he, as you are he. We're all one together. So when I heard Ram Dass say, treat everyone you meet as if they're God in drag, I knew what he was talking about. And I thought to myself, wow, that would be a great song title. So what happens, I write the song and piano, I record it. Larry Russell, myself, this guy George Stass sings background vocals, and John McCurry played electric guitar because I couldn't come up with anything. I played acoustic guitar, but I couldn't think of anything electric guitar wise, so I called John. But I remember my brother saying to me, he got nervous because with the title, he said to me, "Oh man, I hope you're not wrestling up the natives." I go, "Well, what's the best that can happen?" He goes, "Ah, it's a hit song." Well, the funny thing about that song, Chris, is not only does it have the most views of my videos on YouTube, but it also I have it playing on this thing called Django Radio, which is also known as Radio Airplay, and it plays out throughout the world. Would you believe if I told you that the fans that I get for that song are mostly in places like Israel?
It's can't believe that.
Yeah, most of the fans I get for that song are predominantly in Europe and in places like the Middle East, like in Israel. More so than here in America. So it kind of, but if you listen to the song, you can hear that I'm not doing anything demeaning lyrically in there. Yeah, when I say we can love beyond the bag, this is the bag, the body. We can love beyond the bag because everybody's God and drag. We are all birthed from the same place, which can have a double entendre to that. It can we are all birthed from the same place can mean that we all come out technically from a woman, or the part that we all come from the spirit realm, or whatever you want to call it. We are all one race. We are the ones we've been waiting for. That line, we are the ones we've been waiting for. I heard from some spiritual teacher talking about that, but I understood what that meant to say, like, we're looking for someone else to save us, or we're looking for someone else to kind of fix the world, or whatever it is. I don't think the world needs fixing. I think if we recognize that we are all connected to this, like today with the solar eclipse, how many people were out looking at this thing, right? Lots
I
of people.
did.
Yeah. So it brings us all together, and that's what God, to me, a song like God and Drag is about: is bringing people together to say, "Hey, we're all connected. We all know what it's like to feel love. We all know what it's like to feel grief and sadness and all a range of emotions, and we all know what it's like to just to survive." And that's what that song's really about.
How did you survive during a pandemic? What were some of the things you did to keep it going?
It's a great question. I worked a lot, and also I think just like I said, music keeps you going, and just remembering really what's important in life, the connection that you have with people, and thank goodness that these technologies existed, right? Because think about how many people didn't get to see each other; they weren't hugging each other or shaking each other. I remember people were starting to fist bump or elbow bump because we're so used to the physical connection with people, right? And I think to having these things like Skype and Zoom and FaceTime or whatever to still connect with people's loved ones was a beautiful thing. Imagine if that didn't exist. I think people would have really, I feel more so for the people, the elderly people who not only in nursing homes in around the world, but even in people when they had those lockdowns, like in Europe. We were lucky. You're in Canada, right? So here, I don't know what it was like in Canada. You guys had lockdowns too. We had this, the crazy thing here in New York, what we had was you had to have not only the vaccine thing, but you had to have this piece of paper to get into restaurants
Mm.
to prove you had the vaccine. And then you get in there, you take the mask down, you don't know somebody's sitting here or whatever. That whole thing, I'm glad that thing is over. But what I do think that in a bigger picture, maybe that if I think of the spirit reason maybe behind that, as opposed to other reasons that may people think, I think it's to show that, hey, that thing didn't discriminate anybody. That thing was worldwide. It affected a lot of people's health. And obviously, we know a lot of people died from it. And people are still feeling the effects of it, even now, emotionally and mentally, because it really turned the world sort of upside down. And it made people to pause, right? To pause to kind of think, what is important? What is really important in life? You know, what's important? And it's the connectivity with each other. And that goes back to what God and Drag's about.
I totally agree with you, Glenn. And also, musicians were made online, like Chris Mann, Randy Rainbow. They all did like, well, if I can't perform, I mean, pandemic really affected mostly opera singers. They couldn't perform, so they had to do everything online, and it made
Mhm.
them stronger. And once everything was said and done, and the pandemic was over, they went out and were able to perform again. But it affected a lot of people's mental health. It affected your mental health, others, and have you ever had anybody reach out and say, "Hi, I was listening to your song Stillness Speaks, and that really helped me get out of a jam," or "Life Loves a Tragedy. I just had a tragedy myself, and that song helped me out. I wanted to commit suicide, but I changed my mind because of that song." Have you ever had that?
Not on those songs, but I did have somebody reach out to me once about my song Introspection, which is on that album Breathe Love Life. I wrote that song also about 20 years ago with my friend Skip Fredrickson, who is had a band called Beauty's Confusion, which our friend Jennifer Rowan was the singer of.
Mm.
Anyway, I wrote all those lyrics of mine, and most of the music's mine. The verse music is what this guy Skip came up with. And he was like, "Oh, he had this idea," and I went with it. We collaborated on the song, the piece of music. But that song is that song is about the thought of suicide. And one time, a girl actually literally wrote me because she had heard that song. And the crazy story about this is she thought I wrote it about her, a girl that I don't personally know. And I said, no, the song is just about it can be about anybody who has that thought of suicide, wanting to end their life. That's what that song Introspection is about. But I don't know why she thought it was about her, a person I didn't know. But if it helps her to stop her from doing that, then that song served its purpose. With Give Up the Ghost, for instance, there have been people that have commented to me about that song. You actually, I will say this, in regards to Life Loves a Tragedy, it's funny, I don't think I've never played that song live because it's a funny chording for me, chord wise to play it. I'd have to tune it different. It's a very kind of a lot of chords, a lot of not. If I was with a band playing that song live, I would do it. But for me by myself, like a solo acoustic, I've never played that live. But it's interesting you comment on that song because I love the chord structure that I wrote on there, and I love the sort of the movement of that song and the instrumentation of it. Lyrically, looking back on it, I don't know if I would have written it that way now. I think at the time I just was being a little I felt a little sarcasm in me coming out. So, and I'm normally not a sarcastic person, but I think that when I thought about all these, part of my expression, dopey reality shows or dopey
Yeah.
talk shows, I just was like, I was coming from that headspace. But I'm grateful that you actually like that song, and I do love the piece of music for it. And the video was a great thing for me to film. I enjoy the video.
Okay, time to reveal now a secret. Who's the girl and you're in love with me?
Uh, Nobody actually. Yeah. No, sometimes I've written love songs that are not about anybody in particular, but I guess if I had to put a theme in well, yeah, all those songs, they just, it's my idea of what a girlfriend for me would be.
Yeah, I mean, this has received international success in 150 countries. Not just that one, Clouds Disappeared, Go Love Yourself. I mean, just be happy that nobody, like no girl was reach out saying, hey, you wrote You're in Love with Me. You wrote you imagine that? All these girls writing say, you wrote that song for me.
No,
I
you know
want
what the
that in
funny
your
thing?
life.
No, and the funny thing I'll tell you about that song "You're in Love with Me," I was actually in my friend Hendrix's studio at the time, and I was working on something else with him, and I was just jamming on his guitar, and I had that riff, that da da da. I had that here in my house first, the da 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 da. It was like, and then I just built. I didn't have the title, I didn't have those lyrics. It was just a piece of music, and then I went to. Then the lyrics came out. I mean, to me lyrically, it's kind of like a cheesy love song lyrically, but it's quirky. But when I went to record it, and I had Steve Holley, who played in Wings and played in Ian Hunter's band, he did the drums, and I said to my brother, "Hey, would you play on this?" Because he put some real good bass lines on there. He went real into the hard Billy Idol stuff with his bass playing on that. And I did the guitar and piano. I did a trumpet arrangement and played percussive instruments like the xylophone and tambourine. And I did finger snaps and hand claps. What's interesting, my brother gave me a great idea with that song. At the end of it, you can hear that there's these horn lines that I played on keyboard for a trumpet. And my brother said to me, he goes, "What would be really good?" He said, "Think of Herb Alpert and the Tijuana
Yeah,
Brass." And I knew exactly what he's talking about
good thought.
because I had that album, Whipped Cream and Other Delights, and the song, what the God of the A Taste of Honey, which is not a Herb song, but a song that he covered, and you can hear those horns. So I found them. It's not copied him, but I did those lines against the piano lines that are different. So I play the piano, and the horns are doing something else, but it blended nice. I like that. I like how that song came out because it's kind of just it's rocking and it's just a kind of silly love song.
Did you write any music you think, do you feel that, like, for instance, what are your thoughts on your environment? Have you ever thought of writing a piece of music with your thoughts on something like garbage, garbage, nobody loves, you know what I mean?
No, but I will tell you one. To me, I think one of the greatest songs about the environment that was ever written was by Marvin Gaye. Is "Mercy, Mercy Me."
Yeah,
You know, on the album "What's Going On," that song talked a lot about ecology. It's a brilliant record, and but to my knowledge, I've never written a song about the environment, such as the oceans or garbage or anything like that. No, maybe I should.
yeah. You can write a song about anything. You can write a song about dogs. And I know musicians and artists. I guess the same sort of. They go out and say, "I got to write a song." I say, oh, the sun is shining, the sky is blue. I bet you there's going to be songs released about the eclipse and the feeling experience. I bet you anything. I mean, Total Eclipse of
Could
the
be.
Heart. I bet you Bonnie Tyler is making quite a lot of, residuals from that song because it's going to be playing that because that's Total Eclipse of the Heart, eclipse, anything, right? She's probably going, "Oh wow!" So
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if she lyrically wrote if she wrote that song. I mean, she definitely sang it, but
great song.
yeah, I think listen, whatever moves somebody, they write about their love life. They're writing about the environment. They're writing about spiritual matters. I mean, you think of like the great gospel songs that are written and people are singing about
Yeah.
Jesus or whatever.
Oh yeah.
I think that's all great. It's all great.
So what new songs are you working on right now?
Well, I started to write work on a song recently in the last year. An idea that I have on bass. I don't want to say too much about it because I haven't recorded it yet. But that's the next song I'd be looking to go in and record and do the bass and guitar for. It's more of a rock song. It's a theme, I guess, about it's life related, obviously. But I'm not sure, when I'm going to go back into the studio and record again. And I'd like to go and maybe have, even if I do like a 4-song EP or something, put out like a little
Mhm.
thing like that. Normally, in the last couple of years, I've been putting out, well, in the last 10 years, actually, I've been just putting out singles. The last full length record I did was Breathe Love Life that I put
Mhm.
out in 2013. And that album has 19 songs. I actually recorded 24 songs to that record, but 19 made that album. Clouds Disappear was one of those songs I recorded for that record, but I ended up releasing that as a single in 2014. And that song also is now 20 years old.
Can you just go to that album, Breathe, Love, Life, take a song that hasn't been released yet, and just say, "I'm going to release this as a single." 10 years later, or do
Oh,
you have to
sure.
go
There's
through
quite a few
people?
that, huh? I don't have to go through anybody to do it.
No.
If I was to release a single from that, I mean, there's a lot of songs on that record that I didn't make into a video. Pretty much like a good bulk of that album. Uh, some of the ballads, it's hard to say because there's so many good songs on that record. I mean, there's a video for Stillness Speaks that's all just photographs. Uh, I did that a few years ago, and I did overdub on that when I put that video together. I redid the vocal for the first verse, and I actually did the drum intro on there. I played drums on that. Uh, I don't know, maybe one of the ballads, like "A Beautiful Soul," where she chants Buddha's mantras. Those are nice love songs. Or a song called "Our Third Date," which is kind of was inspired a little bit by the song "Build Me Up, Buttercup," and maybe one of those songs, those love songs, what I would do as a music video.
Well, Glenn, thank you so much for the interview, the
Thank
opportunity
you.
to talk to you on the podcast. Before we end the stream, can you let us? So, where do you find yourself this time next year, 2025?
On the Grammys. Well, I mean, that'd be it's a nice thought, right? Hey, I'm on the Grammys. And you're
Invite
like, hey,
me.
I interviewed him on my podcast last year.
Yeah. Glenn Kidd's
You
my
know,
friend. You better give him the Grammy.
exactly. Absolutely. I would love to, this time, like if I was to go another year from now, I would love to really, what I really love to do is take these songs I've already recorded. And there's a couple things I like to do. One thing I like to do, some of those songs I would love to just make them into a classical version because if I take out the vocals and you hear the string arrangements in a lot of those songs, they're good for just a classical record in itself. Like Life Loves a Tragedy, if you took my vocals out, you listen, there's a cello in there, you can hear it. And the string parts. So that's one. And the other part, I would love to play with have a full band play with me to do these songs live. That would really be great. So that's a goal, and to go back in the studio and record again. I
So
haven't
you don't,
been in the studio to record in 2 years now.
so you don't have a repertoire of songs that you've never released somewhere?
You mean like in movies and all that?
No, like there's a lot, like even the I'm sure that David Bowie and Prince have music that they can probably be released 10 years from now. Like music that you
Oh,
recorded that nobody knows about, you have locked away somewhere, so you can just release another album. What's preventing you?
well, nothing. There was songs I recorded for Breathe of Life. I mean, really quickly, there was one, two. There was actually three songs that have the full music, and one of the songs vocally didn't come out right. With the other two, I didn't have any vocals for, so they're just pieces of music. So, I mean, I've tried to take those songs actually and redo them lyrically or vocally, but it hasn't worked. So, the pieces of music are there, but I rather, sometimes it's like that. If something's not working, you better just move on to the next thing and get a better song to come out of it. But and then the only other songs that I would have that could be released technically outside of those would be ones that are demos, things that I've had on cassettes or something like that. And even that, I wouldn't want to bother with it.
I don't know, Glenn. I feel a lot of artists and musicians are struggling, especially indie artists, that they can't seem to get the music out there. And yet, you someone like Taylor Swift with 2 albums a year, 2 albums a year, 2 albums a year. Like, what's going on? Like, why is she so successful? That I don't understand.
Well, I think part of it could be sounds going to sound funny, but I think part of it might be just the destiny of her, who she came in to be. Part of it could be even her astrology. Maybe that's what she's part of what she was born to do. I don't know. But then she also probably she has a brand, obviously. She has a great fan base. She has good songs. There are good songs of hers. So she's not she's a good songwriter, performer, obviously. And I think that all that combined helps, and she already has a name for herself. So why couldn't she go and record and release two records a year? Let's say is because she's constantly writing and has musicians to record and studios to record, and there's the money. Recording is a lot of money to record. Even if you have all the setup yourself, you still have to have other people come in and do their parts or whatever. Unless you're a guy like Lenny Kravitz who records in his home in Bermuda
Yeah.
in the Bahamas,
Hmm.
and when he's doing all those instruments except the horns, like he'll have a horn player play. Him and his guitar player, Craig Ross, are usually the only two guys that are playing on the albums, outside of somebody that does the horns. But he plays the drums, he plays bass, they does the guitar, plays piano. So if you get a guy like him that's multi instrumentalist, then you don't need to hire a band. But I like having other musicians play on the songs because they add their character, their sound into that stuff. So some of the songs are just strictly me playing guitar. But when I've had a guy like John McCurry play on God and Drag, what he came up with guitar wise, I would have never come up with. So it was great to have him do something that I would have not had that idea for.
That's awesome, Glenn. Thank you so much.
Thank
Everyone,
you.
Glenn Kidd, you can find him on Facebook on Glenn Kidd Music. Also, he has music on Apple Music. He has music on Tidal, and he also has music on Spotify and Django Radio and iHeartRadio. Glenn Kidd, thank you so much. We really appreciate this
Thank you.
opportunity to interview you. Okay, everyone,
Thank you.
everything will be linked down below in the description. Stay right there, Glenn. See you, everyone.
It's fear of the unknown that'll get you every time. You can't play the victim or the hero in your own mind. There are no accidents or coincidence. Everyone has a purpose. Welcome to Shangri-La, you finally have arrived. Welcome to Shangri-La, nice to see you have survived. meanings and meanings always has endless teachings. They can point the way and be signposts for all of us to see. Not all roads lead us home. How many wake-up calls do we really need? Welcome to Shangri-La, you finally have arrived. Welcome to Shangri-La, nice to see you have Welcome to Shangri-La, you finally have arrived. Welcome to Shangri-La, nice to see you have survived. Welcome to Shangri-La, you finally have arrived. Welcome to Shangri-La, nice to see you have survived.